Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where it's nice to see some different names in the movie news headlines for once, as some, well, not so new talent, but talent that's been really waiting on the sidelines for a while now, seems to be getting their shot finally. So let's start with the first story of the day, which isn't movie specific, but since it has to do with the rapidly expanding X-Men cinematic universe, I think it's fair game. And that is the new Legion show over on FX, which has finally announced its cast. And what a doozy. Now, they're very ambitious here with this show, what Fox is trying to do. And I think this is probably going to be what they hope is the equivalent of the Marvel Netflix shows. I mean, there's a big difference in that they can't, drop them all at once like Netflix does, which I think really creates like super appointment television and, takes up people's whole weekends in an awesome way. They can't do that. But I think that FX's track record has gotten to the point where they could compete in terms of quality and sophistication. For instance, not only do they have shows like Justified and The Americans and Fargo. Oh, Fargo. We'll talk more about Fargo in just a moment because it's related very closely to Legion. But I just started watching The People versus O.J. Simpson from, the American Horror Story team, the Glee team. It's funny, those are the same thing. And it's absolutely fantastic. So I think that FX definitely has, again, the sophistication and the quality down pat to compete at the level of the Marvel Netflix shows. So this could be a major, major step forward for Fox and what they're trying to do with their X-Men franchise. We'll talk about that with the viewer question a little bit later in this episode, and I'm going to try and dance around the Deadpool movie as best I can because I've seen it, but I'm not allowed to talk about it until Saturday at midnight because it's under embargo. But I think I can free associate around it. Let's see. Okay, so anyway, on to the Legion show. So Legion focuses on the somewhat potentially insane son of Professor Xavier named David. And he is going to be played, now you would think, who could play this role? And they've cast Dan Stevens from Downton Abbey. Now I think it's funny that he's wound back up on the small screen because he left Downton Abbey because he wanted to go and try and make movies. That didn't quite work out. He's appeared in a number of films, for instance, Walk Among the Tombstones, The Cobbler with Adam Sandler, Night at the Museum, the third one, where he was Sir Lancelot. He was pretty good. He was pretty good in all those movies, but he really hasn't hit the big time. But he's dramatically changed the way he looks to the point where he's become quite the haughty, especially when you think of his film The Guest. Now that's the film where he's really made, I think, the biggest impression, and while it didn't do particularly well in theaters, it was like a really strong player on iTunes in particular. I remember for quite some time it was at the top of what people were watching on the top charts. And a lot of people, I talked about this when I reviewed the trailer, were very impressed with his physical transformation. So I think he really brings a strong fan base, both of people who love Downton Abbey, but also people who, I guess, like hot guys, to Legion. And so this could be a very exciting turn of events for his career, and something he desperately needs at this point, because he kind of, I think, has found himself in a bit of a corner. So the rest of the cast is going to be Aubrey Plaza. I think that's a fantastic choice. I really like her quite a bit. She too, after making a huge breakout splash on Parks and Recreation, has really not done so well. I mean, she did The To-Do List, which was a small film written and directed by Bill Hader's wife, actually, which I thought she was very good in. It was about, someone trying to become sexually experienced, so it really limited the audience that it could have. But she did a really good job. I think she was the best thing in the Dirty Grandpa trailer. So this is also nice for her as well. Interesting to see her go back to television as well. TV, a refuge for many talent these days, but more so than that. But then finishing out the cast is Fargo people from Fargo Season 2. Jean Smart will play like a nefarious psychiatrist that David deals with. And then also Rachel Keller, who played actually Jean Smart's granddaughter on Fargo Season 2, will also be in the cast as the fourth main person. So it's interesting, actually, also, that you have one male character and three female characters. That's it. You would think they would go for more of an even balance. And then also, of course, not much diversity there either in terms of ethnicity. But we'll see how the rest of the cast or supporting cast shakes out. But the reason you see two Fargo names there is because Noah Hawley, who is the showrunner and creator of Fargo, the TV show, with the blessings of the Coen brothers, is the person behind this show. And the Fargo show, if you haven't seen Fargo, you are really missing out. I think it's the best that FX has to offer, although People vs. O.J. Simpson is probably, I think, going to end up being on the same level. But Fargo Season 1 and Season 2 are absolutely stellar. And they have amazing casts that were, often movie quality. Same can be said for The People vs. O.J. Simpson. And Fargo, we'll see what happens with The People vs. O.J. Simpson, but American Horror Story, I believe that's also on FX, actually. But American, I don't watch that. It's too creepy for me. But that, all those shows are able to get nominations aplenty for their talent. So I would think that would be something else that would make people be willing to go on to Legion, because with this, with the talent of Noah Hawley involved, I think it means that it's going to get a lot of prestige. It's going to be a prestige show right off the bat. So I think this is very exciting, and I think this is shaping up far better than I ever imagined it would. And I agree with many people who said yesterday when this casting was announced that suddenly I'm interested in this show. So we'll see how it develops. So that's the first story of the day, and we will circle back to the whole X-Men discussion with the viewer question. Now, the second story of the day, talk about reimagining and franchise building, is that Zorro is set to return. Some small production companies are behind this. I'm glad they were able to get the movie rights to the character. Of course, Antonio Banderas played him for 2 films. I thought the second one wasn't that bad, but, it did not ultimately work out. But this is going to be a reimagining of the character. They're going to call it Z. They better beat The Lost City of Z to theaters that, of course, Brad Pitt's been working on for quite some time to try and produce. But anyway, it's going to be maybe like a post-apocalyptic setting with Zorro inhabiting that kind of arena, but still they're like saying keeping the through line of battling tyrants. I wouldn't turn him into Judge Dredd. I think it's important to remember that a really important part of Don Diego was that he was like this playboy nobleman, right? And that's why Batman is the way that he is. Batman is incredibly inspired by Zorro, right? I mean, not only in the comic, but in real life. There are incredible similarities between the two characters. But interestingly enough, the word on the Hollywood street, is that this Z movie wants to try and imitate The Dark Knight. So things come full circle, which is very funny. But what's interesting here is that this, of course, is a Latino hero. And this is why it's in the news, because of some Latino talent that just signed on to the picture. But I want to point out first that I'll never forget when I was doing audience reviews for The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, so many people who turned out to see that movie opening day were Puerto Rican, and they were really proud of the fact that the Wolfman was Puerto Rican. It was a big deal for them, and it was a big thing that drove people to the theater to see that movie. So if they can get really good casting here for Zorro, for whoever's going to play Z, and they make the movie not a mess, I think to put a Latino hero in play is very exciting, particularly considering the Latino box office power that is evident every time a Fast and Furious movie comes out. So I think that could be potentially very interesting. Now, they also, of course, want to have some prestige to it. Christopher Nolan brought a lot of prestige to the Dark Knight movies. So they've signed a Cuarón. Not Alfonso Cuarón, he's a little busy, but they've signed his son, Jonas. Now, Jonas, of course, co-wrote Gravity, and he's also directed a few films himself. He's, of course, is not as prestigious as his father, but the name means something, and I'm sure that Alfonso Cuarón will want to see his son succeed and will work very hard to not only mentor his son in making this movie, but pushing it not only in their circle. The Latino director community has become very strong in Hollywood. I wish the Asian director community and the black director community and the female director community were as tight as the Latino director community. But we're talking about like Guillermo del Toro, and Alejandro Inarritu. I've seen Alfonso Cuarón. I've seen J.A. Bayona. I've seen a number of stories with these guys like sitting at a table together, being like, "We love each other. We help each other. We're a great community." And I think that's wonderful. And they haven't seen too many returns, some of them, for that. J.A. Bayona is just starting to really break out finally, and we'll see what Jonas Cuarón can do as well. But very interesting, and I'm curious, are any of you excited about another Zorro? And also, does it matter to you that it's a Latino vigilante? All right, so the third story of the day, talking about ethnicity in film, is the Ghost in the Shell movie, which is rumored to be starting to shoot very soon, potentially next month. And the funny thing is that they continue to cast white people in the movie. So what happens is, of course, Scarlett Johansson is the lead. This movie was supposed to be at Disney. It's now moved over to Paramount because DreamWorks, of course, has left Disney. So but Ghost in the Shell is still moving forward, full speed ahead. They have the director of Snow White and the Huntsman on there. It's like, why would you hire that guy? But we'll see. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, he did such a great job with Charlize Theron's character, so he's going to really do a great job here. And I'd be like, yeah, that was like 25% of the movie. And so I think Scarlett Johansson wants to be a cool character in a crap movie, which is what happened to Charlize Theron in Snow White and the Huntsman. We'll see how just the Huntsman Winter's War turns out, but I can't believe that guy could get another job, much less such a high profile one. But anyway, they've cast the villain, who will actually be the Laughing Man, for those of you familiar with the source material. And it's going to be Michael Pitt from Boardwalk Empire. So I'm torn, because I love Michael Pitt. He is a fantastic actor. He was so good on Boardwalk Empire. He's also incredibly difficult, which is why he ended up not being on Boardwalk Empire eventually. They got his character off the show because they didn't like working with him. That's how bad he was, even though he was a fan favorite. But he's a wonderful actor. He actually looks a lot like Scarlett Johansson, so I think that's odd casting to some degree. But so he's going to play this villain called the Laughing Man, which is being described as a bad guy / street artist who's part robot. And of course, Scarlett Johansson is playing someone who is all robot, who has had her consciousness moved into a robot, and she is like part of a cyber ops team for the police, hunting down people like villainous hackers. So I think it sounds pretty interesting. I think Michael Pitt isn't exactly a marquee name, but Lucy only had really Morgan Freeman, and then it was just Scarlett Johansson, and she really proved that she could carry that movie. So we'll see. We'll see how Ghost in the Shell turns out. I mean, at the end of the day, if it has Scarlett Johansson, what I'm guessing is a decent amount of nudity or implied nudity based on the source material, and amazing visuals based on also the source material and what Rupert Sanders did with Snow White and the Huntsman, then I think, yes, people will go. But I think that Ghost in the Shell deserves a better adaptation than people will go. And so we'll see if these people, this team can deliver that. But right now, I'm a little skeptical. I mean, Luc Besson is a visionary, and while Lucy kind of fell apart a little bit in some places as well, he has a much firmer grasp, I think, in terms of quality filmmaking. All right, but anyway, let's get on to the viewer question, which, as I promised, has to do with the X-Men Cinematic Universe. So this comes from J255173, speaking of the future, and J255173 says, this brings me to a question, I guess. Do you think, because yesterday I was talking about Jennifer Lawrence refusing to go blue, even for the standee for the X-Men Apocalypse film. So this BTT viewer says, do you think that going forward with more X-Men films in the future, and Jennifer Lawrence most likely not returning, will they diminish the character of Mystique because she no longer has a name talent like Jennifer Lawrence attached? So they would be focusing on other characters, or possibly even new characters, maybe Professor X or Jean. Would future directors, or even Bryan Singer, if he continues with the franchise, reimagine Mystique to something different? I hope you answered my question, Grace. Keep up the amazing work. Smiley face emoji. All right, well, I think this is a great question. For the first part of it, I think that if Jennifer Lawrence leaves, she probably will. She has said she will return for a bigger paycheck, but if she's not willing to wear the blue makeup, I would get somebody else. I'd be like, you know what? Mystique is a short-term gig. Someone pointed out to me that Rebecca Romijn did get sick from the makeup, so I was wrong about that. But I think, it's 2016. We have a lot of advancements technologically. I think this should be a priority number one for the X-Men producing team to get a Mystique transformation down that is not harmful to the talent, right? And then if Jennifer Lawrence still isn't willing to do it, I would get somebody else. And I think it would be very easy to get somebody else because of how high profile a role Mystique is, right? And also some of you pointed out yesterday that she can wear clothing, which would cut down on the blue makeup that she has to wear. And also she can shapeshift more often and have other characters and actors playing Mystique. But the character is so high profile and such a staple of a large franchise, and did so much for Rebecca Romijn's career and now Jennifer Lawrence's career, that I think a number of actresses, even name actresses, would be very keen to take over the role. So, and especially new actresses who it would be like a fast forward, cut to the front of the line ticket for, at least some level of stardom. So I think that they would have no problem recasting Jennifer Lawrence, and they've done it, Mystique, and they've done it successfully. So there's a success factor there, and I think that Mystique is a role that can exist forever, and you can just keep casting blonde actresses or actresses who are willing to dye their hair blonde in the role. Because actually, I don't think either of those actresses are natural blondes. But anyway, moving on. I think that that would be very, very interesting indeed. Now, as for breaking out other characters, I have to say I can't talk about Deadpool until Saturday night. But one thing that I will say is that I really enjoyed an expansion of the X-Men cinematic universe, especially in the hands of other talent besides Bryan Singer. Now, I have a lot of respect for Bryan Singer as an X-Men director. When I watched X-Men Days of Future Past, I was like, nobody directs an X-Men movie like Bryan Singer. But that might have been the nostalgia talking, because I really felt that the franchise was like going home. Like, it reminded me of X2. It reminded me of X1, Bryan Singer's previous X-Men films. But I think that what Deadpool proved to me, without going into it too much, is that other directors can work in this the sandbox and do some really exciting things. And I think that just because Brett Ratner totally did a crap job with X3, it wasn't unwatchable, right? But it was not by any means what people wanted to see. But I think that I wouldn't let Brett Ratner's what he did with the franchise discourage Fox from bringing other people into their X-Men sandbox again. I think that I think with Legion and Deadpool, I think that this franchise is going to expand, as I said, rapidly and very quickly, and hopefully with a lot of talent in place. And I'd be interested to see how it does. But I think that that's all I can say about Deadpool until Saturday night. But I definitely want to see more, and I want to see a focus on different characters. And I think that just as we all know for those of us who read the comics, the X-Men universe is very rich. It is probably one of the best franchises that can be expanded because it has so many great characters. Hopefully this Gambit movie turns out. Doug Liman's directing. Oh yeah, Gambit. I can't believe I forgot about that. I think that's going to be huge. And Doug Liman is a fantastic director. They really lucked out that Rupert Wyatt dropped out. But I think that with Deadpool, Gambit, Legion, I think that this is going to be an exciting time to be an X-Men fan. And thank goodness the movies and TV mediums are going to pick up the slack, because we certainly aren't getting very much in the way of comics these days, because they've been backburnered because Marvel doesn't have the movie rights anymore, which is a shame. All right, so anyway, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below, I think, today's top 3 stories and that viewer question. Anything you'd like to see covered actually on Tuesday, because I'll be covering Super Bowl trailers late into Sunday, so there will be no morning movie news on Monday. So let me know what you'd like to see covered on Tuesday and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.